Hey guys, how are you? This is Ed. So this is my second time to do this video. Did about a 12-minute video and realized the camera had turned off. So definitely not cool, but we're gonna have to do this again. And the reason I wanted to film this or shoot this is there's a lot of ways that you can lose money in this company, or ATP in your training, I guess I should say. So there's a few ways, and I put them on back here on the board. Now, if you're coming in with private pilot, or if you're coming in with zero time, with ATP, we now have a 50-hour program where it's a 50 multi-hour, and before it was a 100-hour, but they're phasing that out unless you're a private pilot, but we're not going to get into this. So what I do want to say is you're spending about $80,000 to get into the program. And that is basically saying that by the time you spend money on your program, which is about $69 something thousand, and then your check rides, your headsets, your iPad, miscellaneous gear, and especially if you're doing housing, you're going to be around the $85,000. So we're going to look at $80,000 here to just make things pretty easy. In this program with ATP, you have time allotments, and I'm going to get into exactly what all that means. But especially if you're somebody that's coming in from a different state. Let's say you're in Nebraska. I don't know if ATP has a Nebraska location, but let's say they don't, and then you want to go to Dallas. So you're definitely going to be eating into that $80,000. But I'm going to explain why it's so important to pick the location that you want to go to correctly. And here's why. So if you're going into, let's say that you were zero time. So I'm not sure if ATP has Class G airspace at all anywhere. If somebody does know, please let me know. But I'm just gonna go with this. So let's say that you are a student pilot that you want to train at Mom and Pop Incorporated. You can usually go somewhere where there's a Class G, meaning that there's no control tower, there's nobody telling you what to do other than you have to make your normal call outs when you start your aircraft and fly around the pattern. Pretty easy. Then you have Class D airspace, which is a little bit more congested, but they have a tower, you've got to talk to them. And then in the evening, a lot of times, they close the tower down and it goes back into Class G airspace where you can just fly around, make your normal call-outs. And then you have Class C airspace, which is where I'm at in RDU, which is Raleigh, Durham. Class C airspace. And we have airspace. So we have this 5-mile ring, then we have, a 10-mile ring. And you've got to basically talk to clearance, then you've got to talk to ground, then you've got to talk to tower, and then once you're getting down the runway and up in the air, you got to talk to departure. And now you've got to do that as well coming back. So you got to talk to approach, then you got to talk to ground, and yada yada yada. It's a lot of information for a student pilot, but not going to get you there right now. What I am going to talk about is how this will directly affect your money. Now, it goes right into time. So know this. In this program, again, you have these time allotments. So as soon as the engine starts, you start burning that time. Meaning that if you have let's say, a checklist, let's say you're going through a checklist, and you're new, and you're fairly new, and you're going through all these checklists, once that engine starts, it's taking your time. And then you got to go through your run-up, and then you got to go through your taxi, and you got to remember, you got to contact ground and talk to taxi, especially if you're at a Class C airspace, and then all of a sudden, let's say the runway is on a complete different part of where you're coming from. So if you're coming from this one section and you got to taxi a 1.5 miles, that's a lot of time taking up your time to learn how to fly an airplane. Then you got to fly to a different airport. You're not going to do pattern work and maneuvers if you're in a Class C. Sometimes you can't do it in a Class D, but typically you can. But if you're in a Class C, you're not going to be able to do that. You got to get outside of their airspace, where you can go to a Class G, which is basically, I'm going to say it this way, it's a go for it airspace. But you know, you can go around and just make your normal calls, and you don't have to talk to tower, you don't have to talk to approach or anything like that. You're gonna learn outside of outside of this congested airspace. When you're done with your training, or when you're done with your pattern work outside of a congested airspace, well, you got to come back and you got to do all this over again. You've got to fly. You've got to fly back. You've got to talk to approach. Then you've got to vector. You got to be vectored different places, and finally you get back to your airport. Then you got to taxi back. Let's say you're at a different part of the airport. You got to taxi all the way back, and then get to wherever ATP is at your home location. Now, that makes for what I'm about to say. You have a limited block of time for each portion of your training. So in your fundamentals training, you may have 2 to 3 hours, meaning that you have those blocks of time to train and learn what you need to learn. So if you've got to go through all this, then let's say you have a 2-hour allotment. By the time you get out of a Class C airspace, you've burnt up maybe 45 minutes of your time. So you've got about an hour and 20 minutes to actually do your training. Maybe even less than that, really, because you've got to come back too. So you've probably got, out of those 2 hours, you're probably burning up a good hour and 30 minutes at least. So all of a sudden your time starts shrinking, and now you're spending more money. Well, you're not spending more money because it's obviously paid in advance, but you're still spending it on stuff that kind of, you know, it takes a lot of your time. If you're in a Class D, let's say you choose a location in a Class D, well, you may be able to do your maneuvers, your pattern work all right there, and possibly the airport is smaller and you're able to get out faster. So you're actually saving money if you're in a Class D. Now that's only me saying that. If it, you know, obviously again, this is a big airport, but if you're in a smaller airport, my assumption would be that you would save money. Also, as you get better going through these checklists and your run up and everything, you're going to get faster and your time is going to come down. But don't rush through anything, because that's the last thing you want to do. But you can get better and faster at your calls, which is your you know, call out lists and your calls and all that stuff. And as far as your flows, that'll help you out. Another way that you can start losing money too in the program is weather. Now, I understand if you're a private pilot, you know, weather is going to affect you in many ways. Whether it's going to be wind, rain, snow, whatever it's going to be, and you may say, well, I'm not going to be flying. Well, gotcha. But what if you do? What if you say, okay, I want to go up, and you know, ATP says yes, you can go up. It's, you know, the ceiling is fine, but you may have some crosswinds. And let's say you're in TOL 1 and TOL 2, takeoff and landings 1 and takeoff and landings 2. And I'm going to go through this too. So in takeoff and landings, you have a 10-hour, your first takeoff and landing, you have a 10-hour block. So let's say you have a 10-hour block to get everything done and learned, and learn how to fly that airplane, whether you're in a Piper Archer like us or if you're in a Cessna 172. Now let's say you're in a Class D airspace, and like I said, you go up and the weather's okay, and you know, but weather can turn real quickly. If you're in Class D, you can go up, you're in the pattern, and then you can come down faster. You don't have to go through approaches. I mean, you will talk to tower, but you don't have to go through a lot. But let's say you're in Class C, you've got to go to a different airport, remember, that weather, I mean, I've had this happen to me. We've gone there, weather gets bad, whether it's at our airport or at my home airport. So we got to come back. So that took up about 30 minutes of my time. And there goes part of my takeoff and landings. So if you have let's say a 10-hour allotment and you're in a busy, congested airport, well, are you really getting 10 hours? No, you're getting about 7, maybe 6 hours at the most to learn what you need to learn. And then you go to your takeoff and landing eval and you got to nail it, obviously. So you can't goof off. You got to learn, but you also have a limited time. Takeoff and landing 2, you have an 8-hour block. And again, if you're in these congested spaces, are you actually, and I'm not really going to classify D as a congested space. It can be, like Fort Lauderdale is probably congested enough, but I'm mostly talking about C here. If you're in a C location and you have an 8-hour block, you may get 5 hours, you may get 6 hours, and if weather comes into it, then all of a sudden, let's say that there's a crosswind, you're not comfortable, you didn't get enough time, you don't feel good about your landings, and you got to do some go-arounds, or your instructor's doing a lot of work. That's eating your time, that's eating your money and your time, and all of a sudden you're not getting your 8 hours, you're not getting your 10 hours, you're getting less. So I would tell you this, make sure, and you've heard the term from other people, chair fly. Well, that is very true. So if you're not getting a lot of time, and if you are in a congested airspace, make sure you get home and you practice what you just learned, and you sit in a chair. I'm pointing to a chair you can't see, but anyway, get into a chair and go over your checklist. Go over mentally what your pattern altitude is and your crosswind. Do your call outs. Get better in your own self, and actually that will help you tremendously if you are in a congested area. So I would tell you that if you are picking a location outside of wherever you live, and with me, I'm 15 minutes away from the airport. I wasn't going to go somewhere else because I'm not going to spend any more money. But if I had a choice, yeah, I definitely want to go to a different airport. So the location, the time, and the weather. Also, I do want to add on to the weather thing is if for any reason you don't feel comfortable, remember you're the one that's paying the money. You're the one that is basically paying and using your time. So if you don't feel comfortable and you feel like you're not going to be productive, then tell your instructor. Your instructor usually has a good feel for who and what your personality is about. So make sure that you talk to him or her and let them know how you feel, because you don't want to waste your time. You don't want to waste your money going up when you're not going to feel productive. So I would say there's a caveat to that. Don't go and, because you feel like a 5-knot crosswind is bad, that you don't want to go up. Use your judgment, be real about this, and you'll get a better training environment. You'll get a better education out of this. And anyway, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below, and also subscribe and give me a thumbs up if you like it. And again, if you have anything, please let me know. I'll be glad to answer anything you have. All right, take care. Talk to you later, guys.